Kiera Stanton dropped the box of white roses with a thud, letting out a breath as she wiped her forehead with the back of her hand. I swear, if another centerpiece topples over, I'm quitting weddings forever. You say that every time. Her best friend and co-planner, Lila, hummed from behind a towering arrangement of orchids. And yet, here you are, again, with a clipboard, a deadline, and a white-knuckle grip on your sanity. Kiera shot her a tired grin. Only because I need the money and I hate sitting still. The coastal wedding venue was a dream floor-to-ceiling windows facing the crashing waves, chandeliers that glittered like icicles, and a marble aisle so shiny she could see her reflection every time she walked past it. The Seabreeze estate didn't host just any weddings, it hosted events for the elite. And the bride, Madison Weller, was marrying into old money. Really old. Like private island, family heirloom, wine cellar under the household. Kiera had been hired by the estate as a freelance assistant to help with setup and coordination. She wasn't part of the flashy wedding design company that had been flown in from New York. She was just there to make sure things didn't fall apart. The invisible fixer. The one no one remembered after the champagne was poured and the first dance was done. She preferred it that way. Until he walked in. She didn't see him at first. She was too busy adjusting the velvet bows on the back of the ceremony chairs, cursing under her breath because some of them were crooked. But she felt him. Or rather, she noticed the shift in the room, the way the staff went quiet, the subtle stiffening of shoulders, the way Lila suddenly stood up straighter. Kiera, Lila whispered, eyes wide. That's Yarden Vale. I think he's on the groom's side. Kiera looked up and froze. Yarden Vale stood near the grand piano, dressed in a tailored navy suit that fit him so well it looked like it had been stitched onto him. His presence was magnetic, tall, broad-shouldered, with dark blonde hair that looked like it had been tousled by the ocean breeze and intense eyes that scanned the room like he owned it. Which, judging by the watch on his wrist that probably cost more than her entire car, he might as well have. Kiera turned back to the bows. He's just a guest. Lila nudged her. He owns Vale Venture Capital. He's worth, I don't know, hundreds of millions? He's on every under 40 list that exists. He's literally a millionaire in a room full of rich people. And he's single. Kiera didn't look up. We're working. Not mingling. But when she glanced at the mirror on the far wall, she caught him watching her. Excuse me, a deep voice said behind her 20 minutes later. Kiera turned, nearly bumping into him. Yarden. He smiled politely. You're the one making sure this doesn't all fall apart, right? She blinked. Yeah. Trying my best. I noticed. You fixed the backdrop. It was off-center earlier. She raised a brow. You noticed that? I pay attention. He said it simply, but there was something in the way he looked at her. Not like she was part of the scenery. Not like she was invisible. Like he saw her. Yarden Vale, he said, offering his hand. Kiera Stanton, she replied, shaking it. His palm was warm. His grip firm. So you're not with the main planning team? He asked, glancing toward the matching blazered crew fussing over the cake table. Nope. Freelance. I get called in when rich people want things perfect but don't want to deal with the mess. He chuckled. Then you're the most important person here. She tilted her head. Flattery doesn't work on me. Good, he said. I wasn't trying to flatter you. Just being honest. She felt her cheeks warm, so she backed up a step. Nice to meet you, Mr. Vale. But I really should. I'll see you around, Kiera. He didn't try to keep her. Just turned and walked away, leaving her heart racing and her stomach flipping like she just stepped off a roller coaster. The rehearsal dinner that night was in the estate's garden, under strings of fairy lights and with a live quartet playing in the background. Kiera wasn't required to stay, but she'd volunteered to oversee the seating logistics. Mostly because she was curious. And he didn't disappoint. Yarden arrived late, walking in with that same quiet force, wearing a crisp white shirt with the sleeves rolled up and no tie. Effortless. Polished. And yet he made time to help an elderly guest to their seat and compliment the chef on the appetizers. He wasn't showy. He was grounded. She tried not to watch him. Failed miserably. He caught her near the fountain as guests started to migrate toward the dessert tent. "You look tired," he said, handing her a glass of sparkling water. "Is that your opening line with every woman?" "No. Just the one who's been on her feet for 10 hours and still hasn't taken a break." She took the glass. "Thanks." He leaned against the fountain beside her. "You don't like weddings." Kiera blinked. "That obvious? Only to someone who's looking." She glanced at him. "And why are you looking?" Yarden shrugged. "I don't know. Maybe because the one person not trying to impress anyone is the most interesting person in this entire place." She stared at him, unsure if he was being serious or just good at charming people. "I'm not interesting," she muttered. "You are." He looked down at her. "But you don't let people see it." The way he said it made her feel exposed, like he'd peeled back layers she didn't even know she had. She straightened. "I have to get back. I'll walk with you." And he did. Quietly. No flirting. No pushing. Just walking beside her like he belonged there. And maybe for a moment she kind of wished he did. The next day, as the final preparations for the wedding began, Kiera tried to keep her head down. She directed florists, double-checked the sound system, made sure the bride's mother didn't faint from stress. But she felt him. Every time he passed by. Every time his gaze lingered across the room. And when the ceremony finally began, with violin strings and gasps from the guests as the bride walked down the aisle, Kiera stood at the back, tucked beside the curtain. Yarden found her there. He didn't say anything. Just stood beside her, hands in his pockets, watching the vows. "Do you believe in this stuff?" she whispered. He looked at her. "Love?" She nodded. "I didn't. Not until yesterday." She turned to him. "I'm serious," he said, voice low. "I came here for a wedding. I didn't expect to meet someone who made everything else seem dull in comparison." Kiera's heart skipped. "You don't even know me," she whispered. "I want to." He didn't touch her. Didn't try to kiss her. But the way he looked at her? It felt more intimate than anything she'd ever known. And just like that, her world tilted. The wedding ended in a flurry of champagne pops and camera flashes. Guests drifted toward the ballroom where a soft jazz band welcomed them in, and Kiera ducked out through the side corridor, her heels clicking softly against the stone floor. She wasn't required anymore. Her role had ended the moment the bride tossed her bouquet and the couple disappeared into the crowd. The rest would be handled by the main team, the ones in glossy uniforms with walkie-talkies and clipboards that matched their heels. She should have left. Instead, she found herself lingering beneath the stone archway outside the ballroom, watching the revelry from a distance. The sky had darkened into a velvet navy, stars beginning to scatter above the waves beyond the garden wall. The laughter inside was muffled by the thick glass doors, but she could still hear the clink of glasses and the low pulse of music. "Kiera." She turned, startled. Yarden stood behind her, his jacket gone, sleeves rolled just below his elbows. His tie hung loose around his collar, and there was something oddly beautiful about how undone he looked, as if the perfection he wore so easily earlier had been peeled back to reveal something far more real. "I thought you'd disappeared," he said. "I was going to," she admitted. "But then I didn't." His eyes studied her face. "Why not?" She hesitated. "I don't know. Maybe I wanted to see how it ended. You don't strike me as someone who watches from the sidelines." She gave a quiet laugh. "You'd be surprised." He stepped beside her, their shoulders nearly touching as they both turned toward the view. The ocean was a black mirror reflecting the stars above it. "I don't usually come to weddings," he said, glancing at the lights flickering inside. "But Madison's brother was my college roommate. He begged, promised it would be tasteful. And was it?" Yarden gave a short nod. "It was fine. But I didn't come for the ceremony." Kiera narrowed her gaze at him. "You didn't even know I existed until yesterday." "I didn't know a lot of things until yesterday." She looked away, unsure what to say to that. "I've been going through the motions for a long time," he added, voice quieter now. "Meetings, acquisitions, flying to cities I don't care about to shake hands with men I don't trust. It works. But it's empty." She glanced back at him. "And you think I'm different?" "I know you are." Her instinct was to challenge that, to push back. but something held her still, the way his voice lowered at the end, how it didn't sound like a line. It sounded like truth. "You don't know anything about me," she said. "Then tell me." She hesitated, then slowly leaned against the stone column behind her. "I was supposed to be a designer. I went to school for it. Thought I'd be sketching dresses, not steaming someone else's and taping down wires so no one trips. What happened? My dad got sick. I moved home, took the first job I could find. Then another, and another. Suddenly it's been 4 years, and I'm still in the same place." Yarden didn't interrupt. He just listened. "I tell myself I'm building something," she continued. "That one day I'll have enough saved to open my own studio. But most days it just feels like I'm surviving, not living." He studied her for a long moment. "You deserve more than survival." Kiera's throat tightened unexpectedly. Before she could respond, a loud cheer erupted from the ballroom as the newlyweds began their first dance. The doors opened briefly, allowing the music to swell out into the night. A few guests strolled onto the terrace, laughter trailing behind them. Yarden stepped closer. "Walk with me." She looked at his outstretched hand, then nodded. They wandered down the stone path that led away from the estate toward the cliffside garden that overlooked the ocean. The moon cast silver light over the water, and the air carried the faint scent of salt and roses. "I've been thinking," Yarden said as they passed a wrought iron bench, "about how strange it is to meet someone who makes you want things you didn't even know you needed." Kiera glanced at him. "What do you want?" "I want to know how you take your coffee. I want to know what your favorite song is and whether you sing in the car. I want to know if you cry during movies or throw popcorn at the screen." She laughed, surprised. "All of that from one weekend? All of that from one look?" They stopped at the edge of the overlook, where the waves roared below the cliff. The wind tugged at her hair, and she tucked it behind her ear as she turned toward him. "I don't date men like you," she said. "Why not?" "Because they don't date women like me." Yarden's expression shifted, sincere now, intense. "You think I'm here because this is some kind of game? I think you're used to getting what you want." "I am. But that doesn't mean it's worth anything unless it's earned." She swallowed hard. He stepped closer. "Let me take you out. I live 2 hours from here. I'll drive. I don't have time for... Then I'll make time." She stared at him, speechless. "I know it's fast," he said. "But when something feels right, you don't walk away from it. You fight for it." Kiera shook her head. "It's not that easy. I didn't say it would be. I said I'm willing." She looked away, heart hammering so loudly it drowned out the sea. "I'm not asking for forever," he said. "Just one chance. One dinner." She turned back to him. "You're serious?" "As serious as I've ever been." Kiera hesitated, then lifted her chin. "Fine. One dinner. But if you show up in a helicopter, I'm walking away." He grinned. "No helicopter. Just a reservation. And maybe a car that drives smoother than yours." "You don't even know what I drive. I bet it's stubborn and underappreciated. Like its owner." She laughed again, and this time it felt real. He didn't try to touch her again. He just walked her back to the estate, side by side, as the music from the ballroom drifted into the night behind them. The restaurant overlooked the bay, its floor-to-ceiling windows casting a golden reflection of the setting sun across the water. Kiera stood by the entrance, brushing invisible lint from her sleeve, suddenly hyper-aware of how out of place she felt in the sleek marble lobby. Her dress was simple, a navy wrap that hit just below the knee, borrowed from Lila's closet, but it had taken her an hour to decide on it. Yarden arrived exactly on time, walking in with the quiet confidence of someone who didn't need to announce himself. He wore a charcoal jacket over a black shirt, no tie, but somehow even more commanding than he had at the wedding. When his eyes found her, something shifted in his expression, a subtle softening, like he'd been holding his breath until that moment. "You look like trouble," he said as he approached. "I almost didn't come," she replied. "I was counting on that." Makes it more satisfying that you did. The hostess led them to a private corner table beside the glass, where the city lights flickered in the distance. The menus were handed off wordlessly, but Yarden didn't glance at his. "Do you always eat at places like this?" Kiera asked, scanning the list of dishes she couldn't pronounce. "Only when I need to impress someone," he said. "Or when I want to see how uncomfortable they'll get when there's no price listed." She raised an eyebrow. "You're not very good at pretending to be modest." "I'm not pretending anything tonight." Kiera set her menu down. "You're pushing hard for someone who barely knows me. I know how it feels when something clicks and you don't want to waste time pretending it didn't." The waiter arrived with complimentary glasses of wine. Kiera took a sip, letting the silence stretch for a beat. "So, what's the catch?" she asked. Yarden tilted his head. "Excuse me? There's always a catch. You grow up around enough wealthy people and you learn to spot the angle. Usually it's business. Sometimes it's reputation. But it's never just curiosity." He leaned forward, elbows on the table. "You think I asked you here to make a deal? I think people like you don't do anything without a reason." "You're right," he said. "I don't. My reason is simple. I haven't stopped thinking about you since that night. And what happens if I don't live up to your expectations? Then I'll be disappointed, but not surprised. That isn't the risk." "Then what is?" "That you might be everything I'm looking for, and I'll have to admit I've been living wrong until now." Kiera didn't speak at first. The sincerity in his voice unsettled her more than any polished charm could have. "Why me?" she asked finally. "You could have anyone." "I don't want anyone. I want the woman who doesn't look at me like a headline. The one who doesn't bend just because I ask something. The one who spent her life holding everyone else up and forgot she deserves to be held." 2. Kiera didn't realize she was gripping her napkin until she forced her hand to relax. "This is dangerous," she said. "Only if you don't believe it's real." "I don't know what I believe yet." "Then let's find out." Their food arrived, delicate plates with artistic arrangements that looked more like paintings than meals, but neither of them reached for their forks. Kiera studied him in the candlelight. "What happens after tonight? That depends on you. Are you always this direct? I don't have time to waste. And I don't think you do either." She frowned. "Is that what you think this is? A time management issue?" "No, I think it's a chance. One neither of us expected." She shook her head. "You're reckless." "I'm not. I'm intentional. There's a difference." Kiera's lips parted, but no reply came. Instead, she reached for her fork and broke the tension by slicing into the nearest dish. They ate in silence for a few minutes, the conversation paused but not broken. The air between them carried something electric, like static waiting for the right moment to spark. After dinner, he offered her a walk along the marina. The breeze had picked up, and Kiera hugged her arms around herself as they strolled past the docked yachts. "Cold?" he asked. "I'm fine." Without a word, he shrugged off his jacket and draped it over her shoulders. It was warm, the lining soft, and it smelled faintly of cedar and something clean she couldn't place. "You do that a lot," she said. "What?" "Act like you've known me longer than a few days." He looked out at the water. "I've built entire companies on gut instinct. This feels more certain than any of them." "You're not afraid of being wrong?" "Not about this." She glanced down at the ring of light from the marina's lampposts reflecting on the pavement. "I've never dated anyone who wasn't struggling." He turned to her. "And now I don't know what to do with someone who doesn't need saving." "I do need something," he said. "What?" He stopped walking and faced her. "You." The world went still. The waves, the wind, the faint echo of laughter from a nearby pier, all of it faded under the weight of his words. "I don't know how to do this," Kiera admitted. "Then let me show you." He stepped forward and kissed her. It wasn't rushed or forceful. It was deliberate. Certain. The kind of kiss that demanded nothing but offered everything. When they pulled apart, her breath caught. "I don't fall easily," she whispered. "I'm not asking you to fall," he said. "I'm asking you to choose." She stared at him, heart thudding like a drum against her ribs, and somehow, without saying it aloud, she already had. Kiera stood in the sun-drenched foyer of the Seabreeze estate 3 weeks later, the same floor she'd rushed across on the wedding day now gleaming in the quiet morning calm. Except this time she wasn't there to tape down wires or adjust floral arrangements. And she certainly hadn't expected to be wearing heels by invitation instead of necessity. Yarden had asked her to meet him here. No explanation. Just a location, a time, and the same confidence in his voice that had made her say yes before her mind caught up. He hadn't pushed for anything since their night at the marina. No pressure, no declarations. Just consistent, quiet presence. A call when she didn't expect one. A visit when her week had pinned her down in deadlines and deliveries. He never asked her to change her life for him, he asked if he could be part of it. She caught sight of him through the glass doors that led to the east terrace. He was facing the ocean, hands in his pockets, and for a moment she just watched him, the way the wind tugged at his shirt, how still he stood, like he was listening to something only he could hear. He turned when he heard her steps. "I thought you hated weddings," he said. "I do," she replied, "but not views." His mouth lifted on one side. "Come here." She walked to his side, and the moment she did, he slipped something into her hand. A small, delicate key. "What's this?" He pointed toward the far end of the estate where a row of sunlit bungalows lined the cliff. One looked newer than the rest, whitewashed, modern but cozy, with tall windows and a wraparound porch shaded by flowering vines. "I bought it last year. I used it once. Never found a reason to come back until I met you." She glanced at him. "You're giving me a house?" "I'm giving you space," he said, "to build what you told me you wanted." Her hand tightened around the key. "Yarden, I can't accept this." "You're not accepting it from a man trying to impress you," he said. "You're accepting it from someone who believes in what you're capable of. It's yours. Lease, utilities, everything covered for the next year. No strings. No expectations. Just a place where you can finally start. I told you I didn't want saving." "This isn't saving," he said. "This is investing. In you." She blinked, throat thick. "You barely knew me a month ago, and yet I've never been more sure of anything." She stared at the key, then at the bungalow, then back at him. "What if I fail?" she whispered. "Then you fail. And I'll still be here." She looked at him, really looked, past the suits and the confidence and the way he always seemed so sure of himself. And what she saw was someone who wasn't offering her a fantasy. He was offering her a foundation. "What if I don't want to live there alone?" His eyes softened. "Then I'll move in the second you ask." She inhaled sharply, then stepped forward and wrapped her arms around his waist. He held her without hesitation, anchoring her like he'd done since the first time he walked into her life. Later that afternoon, they walked through the bungalow together. It smelled of fresh paint and salt air. The walls were bare, the shelves empty, but it pulsed with something alive. Possibility. "I can see it," she said, opening the sunroom door and stepping into the light. "The studio. Right here." He leaned against the frame, arms crossed. "Tell me." Shelves along the wall. A long table in the center, plenty of space for sketching. Maybe even a rack for custom pieces. "You'll need a name." She thought for a moment. "Stanton and Thread." He nodded. "Has a ring to it." "You really think I can do this?" she asked, quieter now. "I know you can. I've never bet on someone with more conviction." She turned to face him. "Why me?" He stepped closer, his hand brushing her hair behind her ear. "Because you saw me before I said a word. And I saw you before you knew anyone was looking." She reached for his hand. "I want you here. You have me." The next few weeks passed in a blur. Kiera moved into the bungalow and Yarden made good on his promise, not with grand speeches or sweeping appearances, but with quiet presence. He helped her order equipment, introduced her to a friend who owned a boutique in San Francisco, even watched in silence while she sketched late into the night, never asking her to stop and never making her feel like she had to explain herself. She launched Stanton and Thread with a small collection hosted in the sunroom with champagne and soft lighting. The guest list was short, just friends, contacts, a few curious locals, but the response was louder than she expected. Orders came in. Word spread. One evening, as they sat on the porch, legs tangled beneath the blanket, he handed her an envelope. "What's this?" she asked. "A little formality." She opened it. Inside was a single page. An offer to partner her brand with a luxury distribution company with her name listed as the majority shareholder. She stared at the document, then at him. "You didn't." "I did. But only if you want it. If not, I'll tear it up right now." This would change everything. So would staying the same. She folded the paper and set it beside her. "Let's do it." He smiled, then kissed her forehead. They sat in silence, the waves crashing below, the stars bright above. "I never thought my life would look like this," she said. "Neither did I." "What now?" "Now we live it." A year later, Stanton and Thread held its first official runway show in Los Angeles. Kiera stood backstage in a custom black gown of her own design, watching the final model step onto the platform as applause erupted across the room. Yarden appeared beside her, dressed in a midnight suit and holding a single white rose. "For luck," he said, handing it to her. She took it, tears prickling her eyes. "I already have it. Say the word," he said, his voice low against her ear, "and I'll make tonight about more than fashion." She turned to him, heartful. "I'm ready." He reached into his jacket and pulled out a small velvet box. "Here?" she asked, stunned. "Where else?" he said. "I fell in love with you because you never waited for life to come to you. You built it. So I figured I'd meet you halfway." He opened the box. Inside was a delicate ring, not flashy, not showy, but timeless. "Yes," she said, before he could even ask. The crowd roared as the lights dimmed, the show ending in a flourish of music and sparkles. But for Kiera, the only thing that mattered was the man in front of her, the life they'd created, and the future they were already stepping into. It wasn't a fairy tale. It was better. It was real. The soft chime of the boutique's entrance bell rang as Kiera stepped inside, her heels clicking across polished concrete. The morning sun streamed through the tall windows, casting slanted light across racks of sleek garments bearing her label Stanton and Thread. The showroom in Los Angeles was officially open to the public, and within the first hour, the front desk assistant had already booked 3 custom-fitting appointments. She adjusted a silk cream blazer on the front mannequin, smoothing the lapel with measured precision. "Don't touch it," came Yarden's voice behind her. "It's perfect." She turned, lips curving. "You're not just saying that because my name's on the wall?" "No," he said, crossing the room. "I'm saying it because you designed something that's already being worn by women who used to think luxury meant sacrificing authenticity." Kiera laughed. "That sounded rehearsed." "It was. I said it to a reporter outside 20 minutes ago." She groaned. "Please don't let them ask me anything about synergy again. I blacked out the last time I tried to explain my brand philosophy. You handled it fine. Besides, you're not supposed to talk like a strategist. You're the vision. Let me handle the buzzwords." He leaned in and kissed the corner of her mouth before she could protest. For the first time in years, she didn't flinch when someone praised her. She believed it now because she'd lived it. Yarden's phone buzzed in his pocket, and he pulled it out, glancing briefly at the screen before tossing it face down on the counter. "Bad news?" she asked. "Not anymore. I just stepped down from my board seats this morning." Kiera blinked. "You what?" "I'm restructuring Vale Ventures. Less frontline, more long-term strategy. I hired a new CEO. Her name's Talia X Wall Street. She's smarter than I am and doesn't blink around billionaires, so we'll be fine." But that's your company. Was. Now it's ours. She turned to face him fully. What does that mean? It means I'm investing in something else now. Something that doesn't require spreadsheets or travel schedules or meetings about meetings. She crossed her arms, narrowing her eyes. You're serious. I'm building a foundation. With you. I want a slower life. Our life. Not something I drop into between quarterly reports. Kiera felt a sudden weightlessness in her chest. That's a huge change. So is falling for you. He took her hand and placed something inside it, an envelope. She opened it carefully to reveal a reservation confirmation. 1 week in Santorini. Departure in 48 hours. I thought you said no helicopters, she joked. Still true. But I never said anything about a private jet. She stared at him. Are you asking me to run away with you? I'm asking you to take a break. You've built something extraordinary. You deserve to step back and breathe it in. I can't leave the showroom right after opening. You can. You just don't want to admit it. I already arranged for Lila to manage appointments. And your assistant has the schedule. I talked to them both this morning. You're impossible. I'm thorough. She exhaled. Fine. But I get to pick the hotel. I already did. You designed the resort uniforms last year. Remember? The thought made her laugh. I forgot about that. I didn't. I remember everything when it comes to you. Later that afternoon, they packed at the bungalow. Kiera folded linen dresses into her suitcase while Yarden made a half-hearted attempt at organizing his own things before giving up and tossing in a series of neutral shirts and slacks. You really don't care what you wear? She asked. I care what you wear. I just stand next to you and try not to embarrass myself. She rolled her eyes. You're ridiculous. He reached for her wrist, tugging her gently toward him. Marry me. Kiera froze. What? Marry me. Today. Before we get on that plane. I don't want to call you my fiancée anymore. I want to call you my wife. She stared at him, heart climbing into her throat. You're serious. I've never been more serious. I already have the rings. They're in the nightstand. Her voice dropped to a whisper. You planned this. No. I hoped for it. I planned for a maybe. But if you say yes, it becomes now. There was no hesitation in her. Yes. His relief was instant. He kissed her like the world had gone quiet, like nothing else mattered except the yes that had just changed everything. That evening, under a canopy of string lights in their own backyard, with the ocean in the distance and a justice of the peace who had once been a wedding guest, they said their vows. There were no guests, no photographers, no floral arches. Just linen, bare feet, a bouquet of wildflowers Lila had picked from the garden, and Kiera's laughter echoing across the grass when Yarden fumbled the ring box and nearly dropped it. You've built something beautiful, he said during the vows. And now I get to build the rest of it with you. And she answered, you taught me that I don't have to do everything alone. That love isn't a distraction. It's the reason. Afterward, they danced under the stars barefoot and breathless. No music, just the rhythm of waves and the sound of their laughter. Their flight left the next morning, and they arrived in Santorini just as the sun began to rise over the white-domed rooftops. They spent their days wandering cobblestone streets, dipping into the sea, and eating olives and honey straight from the market stalls. They didn't talk about work, or plans, or strategy. They talked about what color to paint the nursery when the time came. They talked about Sunday dinners and whether Kiera would ever let Yarden cook without supervision. They talked about new collections, not just on runways, but in gardens and memories and mornings spent wrapped in sheets with the windows wide open. They talked about forever not as a promise, but as a choice they would make again and again. When they returned home, the boutique was thriving, and Kiera stepped back into it with new designs and a new name, Yarden Vale. Her business grew. So did their life. One quiet afternoon, as she sat on the porch sketching a new bridal collection, Yarden brought her tea and kissed her temple. Do you ever miss the chaos? He asked. She looked out at the ocean, then at him. No, she said. I finally have everything I didn't know I was waiting for. And she did. They built a life that wasn't perfect, but it was full of laughter, of quiet mornings, of loud dinners with friends, of soft blankets and shared dreams and the kind of love that didn't need to be shouted to be known. They grew old together, side by side, without ever looking back.